Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Fat Benji Podcast. I am Benji Aflalo. I'm here live in New York City. What a shithole. I used to love this place when I was young. I went to college here. And then when I was struggling in LA to do comedy, I'd always fantasize about moving back to New York because that's where people are cool and they get it. And the more I come back to visit, the more I'm like, this place is a shithole. And it is definitely just getting worse. The common thing that people say about New York is that you got to be rich to really enjoy it, which is true. But I find that rich people who live in New York, they're enjoying it because they're also rich enough to escape at their convenience. So they have their place in the West Village, but then they have a place in Westchester, or they have a place in the Hamptons. And of course, August you spend in France and Spain and Italy anyways. So again, oh, New York comes with this asterisk, you gotta be rich, but part of that is really that you gotta be rich enough to get the fuck out of here. And the perks are sort of diminishing. I don't know what kind of culture is left here. There used to be cool bands, even the cool comedians here. Most of them have left, or they don't live in the city. They're in a suburb. They moved to Austin. They moved to Nashville. Or again, escape plan. You're a successful comedian from New York. You spend a lot of time on the road. I mean, I suppose there are still some cultural benefits. I guess you have walkable lasagna. There's lasagna in walking distance. You've got high-end hookers. You got low-end hookers. But besides that, I'd say the place is pretty much degrading. And I will also say this. The moment you land in JFK, I'm just like hit with this humid waft. And JFK is like humid in August. It's humid in January. And it immediately gives you that New York sort of disregard for your humanity. Just a bunch of people. You know what it is with these New Yorkers? They're rat people. It's all just rat people in puffer coats. It's like they have this like confidence in their rattiness. It's like, hey, I'm a rat. Get out of my way. And it's like, you're a fucking rat. Because I've always been a sad person. I'm a depressed man. And so realizing what makes my life shitty makes me sad. But I think New Yorkers take what should make them sad and instead they get a confidence in it. And then they're like pushy and loud. Except the Dominicans, you guys, I get. I think if you're Dominican, New York, that's cool. But like, just like white people here, you guys suck. And I'll also say this. New York also, I would always recommend, because I went to college here. I spent some of my 20s here. I would say if you're in your 20s, then yeah, New York. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think if I'm in my 20s, I would probably choose Austin, unless you're like a pussy. And I've been walking around the East Village. Like, it is fucking gross. These young kids are fucking rats. Maybe the West Village, the girls are showering. And I don't know if I'm an old man. Like, hot young girls used to shower. And that was part of the appeal. I think it's like, it was sort of like a nonverbal way of letting people know your pussy doesn't smell, or that your pussy does smell, but at least you're trying. The girls in the East Village here, they dress like, it's like a combination of like hippie and slave. It's like an 1815 slave meets like a 1960s hippie wearing like used Coachella clothes that like got donated to a Buffalo Exchange. And it's just like, just be hot puss. Just be hot puss. It's all good. Just be hot puss. So yeah, so if you're like a pussy on Zoloft, then you're in your 20s, I guess move to New York. But if you want to like fuck waiters or waitresses, if you want to do bad cocaine, you like people with tattoos and you want to smoke cigarettes, I'd say go to Austin or Nashville. But or even like Denver. If you're a pussy and you want to shower, go to Denver. I will say this also, because my good friends here and I sort of touched on my 20s. I do have a regret about not a regret about my 20s, but I was chasing the comedy dragon in my 20s to the point where I feel like I missed out on a lot of life. I think I see people in their 20s now and I go, fuck, I wish I didn't have this retarded ambition as a young man to like do something different. And I wish I didn't. Maybe it's not Austin or New York if you're a young person. Maybe Uncle Benji's advice would be like tropical, move to Honolulu, work at a hotel, you know, fuck the other servers, go to St. Bart's, go to like someplace tropical and get a moped and serve mojitos or clean up after the people who drink mojitos and have a good time. But yeah, I think feminism ruined the women of the East Village. But maybe when I was in my 20s, I didn't realize it because I was like, was I fucking dirty bitches in my 20s? Maybe. I guess he's nodding, yeah. But these ones just seem like they're dirty, but like also trying to look dirty, and they have a trust fund, and it's just so gross. And the gay guys too. Again, I come from, like, I think my generation was the first of like gay guys to wear body glitter and women wore body glitter. It's like, you got to be clean. And especially you gays in the East Village, you're already having butt sex. Like, you're doubling down on the gross, like shower. Google 1993 gay person. Be more like that. You guys just look like pink eye. All right. I have my buddy from my 20s. I would say, and I know you'll agree with me because I'm not exaggerating, my friend Dan Madonia is here. I would say in terms of hours clocked of people I spent time with in my 20s, and I don't know if I'm that person for you, but I would probably guess you are my number one 20s person.
That's a good estimate. I'd say you're definitely in my top 3, like, for sure. Like,
oh fuck, who has me beat?
Like maybe Sandy.
Right, because you guys
lived together, but
right.
we also lived in the same building together.
Time outside your residence, though.
But it's pretty much like from day one at the Comedy Store, it was me and you. Like,
yes,
everywhere. When we went everywhere, our 20s was very much spent together.
Yeah, and Dan was a ride or die friend. We worked as door guys in the Comedy Store together. And I'd say Matt, Edgar, and Tony Hinchcliffe, they were also up there, but like we grinded, like we were there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we were there more than Tony and Matt.
We were 100% there. We took all of their phone shifts.
We took all the phone shifts.
Yep, it was me and you doubling up every day of the week at the Comedy Store.
We would drive to La Jolla a lot together and do gigs. I'd say we've netted doing comedy together negative $40.
That's probably about right.
We've done so many gigs together where we just lost money or like barely made money.
Pocatello, Idaho.
Oh, right. You were there for that.
Yep.
And Idaho Falls too, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a buttfuck place.
Yep.
But these are experiences.
Yeah.
That was a thing called Tribble Runs that LA comics used to do where you would drive to the Northwest and you'd make $100 a show. And I think, were we co-headlining or?
No, we were featured. We weren't even getting we weren't even getting the headliner pay.
That's how pathetic it is to be a young comedian. I don't know what it is now because they just want to be big on the internet. But when we were young doing comedy, it'd be like, hey, dude, why don't you come along and network and hopefully you too can make $100 and drive 30 hours to do a show one day. Just come for the ride. And it's like, yeah, that sounds like a good opportunity. I'd like to maybe lose $30 in the future. I'll come with you. Do you have any regrets from your 20s chasing comedy the way we did? Do you ever look back and think, not like, okay, I use the word regret too heavily because I don't really have any regrets. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure if I did choose to be a bartender in Honolulu, then I'd have the regret of never doing comedy. But do you ever get jealous of like people in their 20s doing more normal things than we did?
I don't. I think we had a lot of fun.
I
really think that we went above and beyond in our 20s and had a much different experience than most people get in their 20s. Just like where we were, the people we were around, the things that we were doing. Like, I enjoyed my 20s. I don't really have any regrets, especially now I'm almost 40.
Okay, yes, I definitely enjoyed it. Like, my dreams came true. We worked at a comedy club in the Sunset Strip when it was still fun. We met famous people. We went on the road. There were chicks and stuff sometimes. So it was fun. But I think what I mean more so is that, not to make it dark, but I think when you're a young person, to choose stand-up comedy and that path, there's probably something wrong with you that you fully don't understand yet. Maybe you could be like, oh, something's wrong with me. I do comedy. Clearly, my mom didn't hold me. Or like, you make the stupid hack jokes, but So I think because I had what was wrong with me that set me on the path that I went, that I did miss out on like a joy of life that I see other people in their 20s have, where they're just like work at a coffee shop and they don't care, and they met a girl who works at the coffee shop with them, and that's it. Like, I don't know, an ease of 20s. I guess it was. Maybe I'm just being a bitch.
Our coffee shop was just a comedy club.
Right.
That was what it is. That's who we were. That's where we were fucking. That was like, that the Comedy Store was our coffee shop that we worked in during the 20s.
Right. That was our central perk.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I first met Dan, I think, how old were you? 21?
I was 21. Yeah.
Dan was 21 and he was a fucking wild dude. He lied all the time. He was just wild and lying and fun and reckless. And he was only 21 and he definitely grew up. So my question for you, Dan, and now Dan is an adult. He's a father. He's definitely grown up. Also, I should call out that I was maybe like 24, 23. Mm-hmm. And when you're 23 and you meet a 21-year-old, you're like, come with me, young lad. And it's like literally a difference of 19 months, but they're on a totally different trip of bad behavior. So what was your path of like growing up? Like, did it happen in phases, or like what made you get married? So like, I don't know. You were just so wild. What was your path of slowing down and becoming
I was literally, when I broke my leg.
You broke your leg?
When I broke my leg playing softball for the Comedy Store, like a true athlete. That literally slowed me down. It slowed me down enough because I was going crazy. It was a lot of girls, a lot of fun, a lot of partying. And I had been seeing my wife at that time. Like, we had recently started seeing each other, and I broke my leg and I literally couldn't run from her. And that's what it was. I was running from relationship to relation. I big quotes on relationship. And then I was able to actually, I hung with her and she took care of me. And like, that was to be like, oh, I'm going to be in a committed relationship with this person. That was a big thing for me. And we lived together like almost immediately. And, we still had fun. Like when we got together, like me and her were partying then. And it was a tag team instead of me running singles. And we'd have fun. And, she smoked a ton of pot with me, which was great. Like, we've been together like 14 years now.
Wow, 14 years?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How old are you now?
I'm 37.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
Oh boy. We used to call Dan Soulless Dan. Did that bother you?
No, never. I didn't have a soul. I had no soul. So there was literally no problem. Oh yeah. Soulless. I like that. I like the way that clicks.
The Comedy Store at the time was just so raw. And it was just like the literal nickname being Soulless Dan. And everyone agreeing on it, being like, yeah, that's right. Soulless Dan. You also, and I'll say this, as you tell your story about your wife, I will say this, despite your rough and tumble ways as a young man, you did have you had your principles, and you were loyal. You've always been a very loyal friend, and you had your standards and your principles. So even though you were a reckless young guy, you still sort of, So I understand why girls liked you. And I understand why your wife liked you, because, like I said, we've spent a lot of time together, and you are not only fun, but you're a very easy hang, and you're which I think, I've always told you this, I think women like consistency because women are inherently scared of everything. They have 3 holes. They can get beat up everywhere they go. They're very vulnerable. So more than they want a wild and crazy guy, or they want to have fun, they kind of want to know emotionally, socially, what they're going to have to deal with in that person every day. And because you have a very consistent thing, despite you being young and wild and having no money and all those things, I think girls still liked you because you were incredibly consistent. You weren't a bitch. and you were always sort of the same guy. You didn't ever have like a weird emotional swing. Or
Yeah.
a lot of comedians are like alcoholics and then they get too drunk and you're like, oh God, or they're obsessed with themselves and they're ranting about how the world isn't fair and you're like, oh God, but you're not that guy. You're very like, and I think women like that. And so, yeah, you were pretty wild with the chicks when we were young.
Yeah, for sure.
How much can I talk about?
Go talk.
Before I get into the wild chick stuff, I was thinking about this with you too, because you have 2 sons, right?
Yes.
Do you think if you would have had daughters instead, if I was like, hey, can we talk about all the chicks you fucked, it would be different? Or would you be like, no, my daughters will know that
I think my past is my past, and that's what happened and led me to where I am. Like,
okay, so
yeah.
I think I once told a story about the time you did mushrooms and chased me around naked and I kicked you in the dick.
Yes.
So I've already told that story on the podcast. Go find it if you want to hear it. Maybe we'll revisit it. But I think my favorite story is, of course, the time you got your dick sucked on the Comedy Store stage with Ari Shaffir. And I will say this, and everyone will have their own take. I feel part of making that night happen because the girl was on the patio. It was me and Sam Tripoli.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like back then that place was just wild. And there's like a porn star-ish / hookery girl there.
It was the night of, it was a Sam Kinison tribute night in the main room. But it was
later in the
happening.
evening. That
was, but they were products of the Sam Kinison tribute, the porn stars and stuff like that ended up on the patio that night. We had the Back from Hell Sam Kinison thing or whatever.
But that was already been striked. That's not even up anymore. This is hours after the show. This girl was there to see is there. She's still hanging out drinking. And me and Sam Tripoli are talking to her. And Sam Tripoli used to have like a show with porn stars and he knows his way around that kind of thing, to put it in the most gentle way. So we're talking to this girl and we're just like, baiting her into saying dumb shit. I don't remember exactly. But then I don't know. I can't do it. I maybe can still do it. But as a young man, I was very flexible. I could put my feet behind my head. It's a genetic thing. Everyone in my family have very flexible hips. We sit weird and
nice.
So I kind of bait her into it and I go, if I put my feet behind my head, will you? And she's like, you can't put your feet behind your head. And I'm like, all right, take me up. If I put my feet behind my head, will you? And then she's like, fine. And then so I did. And then she's like, fuck. Okay. She gets down on the nasty ass floor, puts her feet behind her head. And then that was the initial spark of all these drunk comics being on the patio. Now the hoary girl that every guy was already kind of looking at has put her feet behind her head on the patio. So somehow it was like Sam and there was this other guy there. Somehow the talk of a dick competition comes up. Who has the biggest dick? And then she like grabs a nerdy guy and she's like, I bet he does. Like just to be funny. He didn't. He was some nerd. And then I'll never forget this. PJ, I won't say his last name, but he was this like Jersey Northeast guy, smoked cigarettes, slicked his hair back, always wore a linen Hawaiian shirt. He's like, we're having a big dick competition. He jumps on a coffee, not a coffee table.
One of the outside.
A brasserie table, I would say, but it's beyond pretentious to call any table at the Comedy Store a brasserie table. But he jumps on the bistro table, also pretentious, and then he starts rubbing his dick. It's in his pants, but he's like, are we having a fucking dick competition? Rubbing his dick. And we're just like, so then Sam's like, take it to the stage. And then a bunch of people from the patio and the girl rush to the stage and Don's up there. And then Sam throws it to Don and he's like, hey, this girl wants to have a big dick competition. And so, of course, Don Barris knew what to do with that. So then somehow she's on stage. Did she take her tits out? She probably did.
I think she did.
Takes her tits out, which would happen sometimes. And then somehow we get to the big dick competition of it all. And then Ari and Dan end up on stage. Feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything.
It was they brought the nerdy guy up, and the nerdy guy was gonna go against Ari. It was the nerdy guy and Ari for the big dick contest, and that was what was gonna happen. And the nerdy guy was just like, "Oh no, I can't do this. I can't. I have to bail." And everybody's like, "No, what are you doing? We have to have the contest." And I was just like, "All right, I'll do it." I stood up. I'll take one for the team. Let's go. And then I took the stage.
So he takes the stage, and somehow the big dick competition just became two guys getting blowjobs on stage. And yeah, and I'll never forget this. Both Ari and Dan had completely no pubes. And I was like, how are these motherfuckers so ready? And then you got to wonder, like, were they eager to do the big dick competition because they knew their pubes were ready to go? Would you have done it with a full bush? No.
I would have.
You would have.
I would have.
I believe you.
I have bush confidence.
And then, of course, so at this time, we had a manager. I won't say his name. Let's just call him Boldfinger. And shit was wild when he was the manager. We used to like gamble and he was like on drugs or something. And it was just so fun. That was like probably the funnest few months of my life when they gave that guy responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
And then he's just in shock. He's frozen because he wanted all the comics to like him, which is often a problem at the store, which is like everyone wants comedians to like them because comedians are funny. And if the funny people like me, then I'm funny too. You're not. But no, but Boldfinger's cool. Not to say he's not funny. He's a great guy. And I remember looking at him. He's just frozen in shock. He's like probably thinking he's going to get fired. And I was like, hey, shut the front door. There's blowjobs happening on stage. I come from business owners. So I was like, hey, you know, dicks are getting sucked. People, you know, probably a health code violation. Maybe shut the door. And that was that night. That was probably a wild Dan Madonia story.
Yeah, it was. It was like, and that was, and it was, and then it was afterwards. It was so funny because after that happened, literally a million horny comics like bombarded this girl like, I have a dick that could get sucked too. I was just like, I just grabbed her. I was like, come on, let's go. We're getting you out of here.
And you took her home.
Yeah, I saved her life that night.
Oh, that's wild.
She was a wine connoisseur.
Was she?
That's what she said.
I bet she was. Yeah, so that was pretty wild. And then you took her home. What were some other Dan Madonia stories? Then, of course, yeah, there's the time I bailed you out of jail. Because I've already told the story, I'll just tell it quickly. Me and Dan were supposed to do mushrooms. Oftentimes I get cold feet and then I don't want to do the mushrooms. So then Dan was like, I'll just do all of them. So then I'm hanging out at Dan's apartment and then all of a sudden he runs out of his room naked and then he like jumps on me. So I kicked him in the dick and then he started chasing me. And so I just went home. And then he called me from jail a few hours later, and me and Big Dave went to go bail you out.
Yeah, I called you at the Comedy Store.
Yeah,
and I thought I was just me calling you. I thought I was just tripping like hard. Like when I was in jail, I was like, oh, if I just go to sleep, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be fine. And I think I told people that. Like I called David Taylor first because that was the first number that I remembered.
Right.
Because
8189. I won't say his,
because he would go on stage and he would say his phone number and you'd text him and he'd read from it on stage. So I literally called him and I told him, I was like, I'm having a bad trip right now. But everything's fine. I just need to go to sleep and I'll be fine. I'll wake up and I'll be fine. Meanwhile, I'm in jail.
Remember Big Dave? Yeah, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, and then I called you. I called the Comedy Store because that was the number that I remember. And you were in the cover booth and you answered. And that in my head confirmed. I was like, oh, I'm definitely tripping because I was chasing Benji. How would I be able to call him and him be at the Comedy Store for me to talk to if I had just been with him? Meanwhile, mushroom time. It's been hours now. And I'm like, of course I'm tripping. I'm just going to go to sleep. And you're like, we'll take care of it. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm still sitting in this room with a phone. And I'm like, well, let's call the Comedy Store again just to prove that I'm tripping. And I called and Adam Sajan had answered the phone that time. And he's like, Dan, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just having a bad trip right now. Like everything's fine. And he's like, Benji's on stage right now talking about how you were naked and and you're in jail. And I'm like, oh, well, is he coming to get me? Like,
I did.
Yeah, and you did. You're like, when you did your employee spot, you did your employee spot first, which I commend you for. That's important. That we weren't getting paid much. Those spots were so important. And then you guys came and got me.
Hilarious.
And I got a brand new pair of blue PJs. courtesy of the LAPD.
What was Bill's? Like $800, I think.
Yeah, yeah. You and Sandy split it.
Yeah, but you paid us back.
Yeah. Yeah, especially because I didn't get in any trouble at all. They were like the prosecutor was like, "Oh, we don't really want to." I got off scotch-free, so it really was just me having a bad trip, really. And that was my worst trip, and nothing bad actually happened from it.
As a dad, are you going to teach your kids to be badass? What's your approach, to be like you or not like you, or both?
Like me to an extent. Like
Right.
I want them not to make the same mistakes I did, but you know, they're gonna make mistakes. Like, and they're gonna have their own path, and they're little blonde-haired, blue-eyed devils. Like, they're gonna be a problem for people. I know already. Like, it's gonna be dangerous. It is good when those kids are of a certain age. It is already like I can already see the way that people treat them. Like already, they're already held on a higher pedestal than like the people around the other kids that are around them.
What do you mean? How they treat them? Why are they on a higher pedestal?
When my son Axel comes in, like he is so popular. Like I go to the grocery store and people are like, Axel. And I'm like, how do you know my son? Like it's already like.
He's charismatic.
Like, everybody comes over to me all the time. They're like, we go home and we talk about Axel. And like, I'm like, are you talking about the other kids? Or it's just like, my kids are popular.
What do you do? Like, are you like trying to make them athletes or musicians? Like, are you pushing them in any direction?
I'm
or no?
not. I'm giving. They've got free reign to do whatever they really want to do. Like Axel right now wants to be a pirate, so
you're just leading into pirate.
Yeah. Let him be a pirate for a little bit. Get that booty.
I don't have any kids yet, but in my head, I'm like, I already want to be like what's like a tiger mom, but a tiger dad. Like, I want my sons to be baseball players or doctors or both.
Yeah,
and I'm going to start young. That's my plan as of now. But I've been hanging out with my niece lately, and it's exhausting. So I don't know how realistic it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I'm going to have to go vegan and sober once I have kids. Just
Really?
being around them, I'm like, I don't have the energy. Like, I'm going to have to change my lifestyle completely.
Yeah, I don't even think making those changes will help. I think it's you're just going to lose that energy no matter what. They're hard to keep up with, for sure.
Even carrying the 3-year-old, they're fucking heavy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you gotta have upper shit. I'm carrying my 3-year-old everywhere. We're getting done, or we get done at a Knicks game, and he's just asleep on me the whole way home. Like,
it's the cardio though. The weight doesn't bother me. It's the walking with the weight of the child where I get like, like I don't have the cardio.
It gets better.
It gets better.
It gets better. Yeah,
Okay.
and you get better carriers too. That's it. Like, I got a good carrier where I can have my baby on my chest and he's just chill. And then now the 3-year-old wants to walk all the time. And I think they will go like arts or athletics. I think my first son, Axel, I think he's definitely going to be the more artistic one, is the way it's seeming. He was a preemie. And
those fucking artsy preemies.
Exactly. Like, you know, I think he's going to have the more artistic soul of the two. And then Bennett, the second one, he's just, he came late and he's big and like, he's a bigger version of his brother at each stage. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. Like it's interesting. Like every single stage, it's like, oh, that's exactly how your brother was, except for he was just smaller and had less hair. So I think Bennett's definitely going to be the athlete and Axel will go the artistic path.
I was reading this. So Elon Musk disowned his trans daughter or whatever. And now the trans daughter was a son. I don't know. But she's like talking out. She did a thing on Threads, which I think is funny because he owns X. So now she's like talking shit about Elon. I find it to be not fair, like, especially because if your dad's Elon Musk and you're trans, like, when I see poor trans kids, they look shitty. It's just like, I got pink Crocs. I'm a girl. Like, Elon Musk's trans daughter, like, looks pretty girly. She's been getting expensive meds the whole time. So I think she should have a little respect for him. Do you worry about that stuff?
I don't.
You don't think your kid will end up trans?
I don't think my kid will end up trans, but I'm not scared of it happening either. Like my nanny growing up, I had a tranny nanny. So,
right, yeah.
Like that was, I grew up and like I there's a lot of fear from people about them. Like they're gonna molest. Like I never got molested by my tranny nanny. Like that was like that's not what happened. I learned to dip my cigarettes in filters in wine, and I learned the full course to cabaret, but there was no fear of.
Do you think something's lost though? Because then when kids become trans in high school, then it's like maybe you were gonna have a gay son, but now you have a trans son. Or you think it's equal? Would you rather have a trans son or a gay son?
I don't care.
Trans son sounds more expensive.
It does. I don't want to spend any money. For my 20s, I don't like to spend money on sex in any way. So even if it's my own I don't want to like just do what's free.
I think lesbians and gays are like better for the family.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I don't know. I think, like I said, I think a lesbian or gay is more likely to have a good job, help you with your retirement when you're
changing
older.
chemistry. It's gonna be a different person, no matter matter what. It is a transition. Like you're doing chemicals and changing your body chemistry. That's you're becoming a different person. So obviously that's not my son anymore.
It's gonna be harder to be a CEO and take care of me in my retirement if my kid's trans. So I guess the point I'm making. Whereas a gay or a lesbian or a straight, more likely to have like a construction company.
Yeah.
All right, question. So you moved on from the store in a way.
Yes.
And when you're there the way we were very much so there. And like you would do phones and pick up phones, and then like comedians from the 80s would call and be like, I used to have this job, or my thing's here. I'm the best. Why don't I get spots? So there's this thing with the store where eventually you kind of move on. Everyone moves on. It's almost every comedy club. They're covered in these headshots of these ghost comedians that were once fucking king of the castle, but then time happens and they're just not there anymore. They're not known in comedy or to really anyone at all. Some, not all of them, but most of them. And when you're young and you're there, you're like, how does that happen, man? Like, I'm here and I'm never going to quit and I'm never going anywhere. And eventually people move on in some capacity. So I'm still there, but I feel like the odd man out because I feel like everyone's younger than me or all my friends left. So I kind of feel isolated like it used to be all my buddies, and it just doesn't feel that way anymore.
Yep.
How does it feel for you? You've moved on. You've moved back to New York. Like, what's the Comedy Store in the rear view feel like?
It's I see the posts and stuff on social media, and I'm like, yeah, that's not where I belong. Like none of these people, like my class has moved on, and it definitely, that's what it felt like when I left, and that was a big part of why I left. It sucked too, because like towards the end of me being at the Comedy Store, all my spots that I was getting were all super early. And all my friends' spots, like the people that I would want to hang out with and stuff like you and stuff, were getting super late spots. So like if I wanted to hang out with my friends at the store, I'd have to be there from like 7 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not in my 20s. I'm not homeless anymore and need a place to stay. I'd rather be home and comfortable. And now that like I'm doing the road a lot and stuff like that, it's nice to just have a good home and go there. And that's how it felt. Like I was enjoying being home more than I was hanging at the Comedy Store. And it was especially because the people got younger, the employees were changing, and it's a snake that completely shed its skin for me. Mm-hmm. That is what the Comedy Store is. And I was a part of that old skin. and that skin's gone.
I like that. Yeah, because when I'm there, I do feel like my time there has run its course.
Yeah.
Because there was also a time there where I was like on a TV show and Adam was giving me great spots. So there's also an element of like swallowing my pride where it's like I used to go up like twice a week, sold out shows with Joe Rogan and David Spade and Sebastian. And it was just like fucking awesome. And now it's like sometimes I don't even get a spot or I get one spot in the middle of the night. And I'm just like, oh, this is gut wrenching.
Yeah, and it's hard because we grew up there. That's where we grew up comedically, and some of the people that are there are never going to see us beyond Baby Benji and Soulless Dan. Like there are some people that are never going to see beyond what that was. And I was like, all right, well, if I go to New York, I'm not Soulless Dan anymore. I'm dude with 2 kids
doing comedy,
Ray Romano style. Like, I'm doing my spots. I'm going home to take care of my family. I do my spot, I leave. I don't have to hang anymore. Whereas at the Comedy Store and there's an obligation to hang. There is. Like, if I wasn't hanging, I wasn't getting spots. Like, I wasn't getting booked spots. I wasn't getting pop-in spots and stuff like that. I literally had to be there, and I couldn't do that anymore. I'm grown.
Sorry, we had to pause for a siren, and I was telling them that I'm familiar with New York podcast sirens because I listen to a fantasy baseball podcast called Fantasy Baseball Today. No big deal. I'm in the listener league because I won a contest. Because everyone wants to be in their listener league. You got to win a contest to get in, and I fucking won. I probably have brought that up too. So my question for you is, so when Dan and I first started, comedy hadn't had its comedy boom that it had. I guess it's still we're still kind of in the comedy boom.
We're in the bubble.
We're in the bubble. But when we started, comedy wasn't popular. We were just poet rats. And all the paid regulars we would watch when we would learn weren't really that famous. And all of our peers were just our peers and we're definitely not really famous. But since then, a lot of those guys we watched while we worked the door have become very famous, and a lot of our peers have become very famous. So my question for you is like, whose fame makes you like happy? So some people get famous and you're like, totally, but like I'll give you mine. Like the way how famous Tony Hinchcliffe has gone, because I know his story, it just makes me happy. Not even for him. It's not like I'm proud of Tony, but just for like life, that I know what he went through and how like everyone was hard on him and how confident he was when he was starting and how much that rubbed people the wrong way and how he's still so much like he is now as when he, you know, like, like Tony's story makes me happy. Who's
me
your
too.
person?
Same also. Tony, like we were there. We like, like Tony makes me like watching him blow up it made me extremely happy. And it like, and like, I love Moses's success. Yeah. I like the success of Roast Battle and watching that come up. I was thinking about it the other day. I was like, you know, I was there and I watched the very beginnings of those two things happen and grow. And they were very like, it's beautiful how it's like stepped each of them up from where they were. And they're both still who they were. Yeah. Brian Moses, Tony Hinchcliffe, like those are the guys that I started out with. They're just in a much better position than they were. Like they didn't change because of the successes that they've had.
No, they haven't changed. And they've definitely both gotten incredibly skilled at what they do. Like Tony's a fucking beast. Moses is a great host. I remember I would see it with Moses. There was I think it was the Bieber roast where he was like on the red carpet interviewing people. And I was watching him and I'm like, he seems like a professional fucking host. I was like, good for you, Moses.
Another one that makes me really happy that I love seeing is Jesus Trejo.
Yeah, Jesus is doing good.
Jesus doing good is like he's got the PBS show. He's writing kids books. Like I have pre-order for his new book for my kids to read. Like I love seeing Jesus do well, just because he's always been the nicest guy in the world. Like I remember when he first started at the store, and he's always been just such a positive thing to see. And I was there. We did me and him we did our first co-headline together at a club. Where we co-headlined, and the host ended up, after we sold it out the whole weekend, and the host ended up leaving with more money than us. Like, just going through those things together, and now seeing him, being able to just book a weekend on his own and sell it out is wonderful to see.
One of the beautiful things of seeing so many of our peers and just the people around us get so successful is also, truly in life, I now know for a fact that life isn't fair. But from what I've seen in comedy, it kind of is fair.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, if you're talented and hardworking and nice, 90% of people who have all those qualities made it to serious success. And so usually the bitter ones who don't make it, there's a reason. They're either kind of lazy, or they're maybe not that really funny, or they're just like negative energy. But the ones who were positive and hardworking and cool and had the heart, they almost all made it.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't a lot of really hardworking, funny people who never make it. And I hope this becomes a clip and it goes online and a bunch of comedians see it who are bitter. And you're not successful because you're either not funny or you don't work hard. Sorry.
Or you're not cool to be around. Like, if you're not a cool hang, like, there's no reason for anybody to take you anywhere or have you be in their circle or anything. Fucking just chill out.
Especially with the podcast of it all, because so many people got famous from the podcast, that it's like, if you're awful to be around for an hour, or after an hour of talking, you're annoying. Like, listeners probably don't want that. The person who's going to put you on their podcast don't want that. But yeah, from my experience, like, Santino, killing it. So funny, hardworking, great guy. Theo Von, killing it. Always so funny, always really nice, always hardworking. So Bobby Lee, same thing. So funny, always grinding, always showing up. Really good guy, helped so many people. And so, yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing that I saw in so many people getting successful, is sort of how oddly fair it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are people who never really made it to like the top of the mountain, and they don't have billion-dollar podcasts or whatever it is people are chasing. But I think those people often have something else, like a family and a lovely wife, or there are trade-offs.
Yeah. I'm not famous or known in any capacity, like, really, like,
right.
But I make my living doing comedy, like,
right.
And I have 2 kids that I care for doing comedy, like, and that is a big peak for me. Like,
I kind of made a conscious decision when COVID started, because before COVID started, I always had this feeling in stand-up. I was sort of really depressed for a while before COVID. And I always had this feeling of like, I can't go on. I'm like weak with sadness, but I can't not do comedy, because if you put it down, I'll get phased out. And I still believe that. Maybe I would have. And you just have this feeling of not being able to quit. And I wanted to just quit. I think it's the same thing I was talking about in the beginning, where I have these pipe dreams of like living on a scooter and serving mojitos. And then COVID came and I got it. I got this break from comedy that I wanted for 15 years since I started, 17 years. And when I got that break, I was like, I'm going to focus only on my personal life. And I got married and all those things. And so, yeah. And maybe that was maybe a bit of a trade-off for me. Like when I had Ari on, he was sort of saying how he didn't grind super hard during COVID.
mm-hmm.
And that's when a lot of comedians blew up, because everyone was on their
true.
phones. And I made a choice to focus on my personal life, but I wouldn't take it back. I'm happy that I have a wife that I love and I have 5 embryos in a freezer. I think it's worth it. So is your plan to stay in New York and raise your kids here for sure?
Yeah. I think this, if I'm going anywhere else from here, we're probably going to go to Europe if we're making a big move again since coming from California. But that's the only possible leap that we'd probably take.
Is there something, because you're originally from upstate, Orange County? Is that considered upstate?
It is, just because anything outside of the city is considered upstate.
But it's like 2 hours north?
It's like an hour and a half, at 60 miles.
Is there something nice about coming home after like your time in Hollywood? Like, do you have cousins? Like, are there family perks or just familiar perks?
There are. So like I have cousins and stuff, and they all have kids. So it's nice to like have like family get-togethers, like Easter and stuff. Because like I was all alone in California for the 15 years I was there.
He was such a horse, dude. This guy. I don't know if I even captured. I'm sure I'm missing more stories, but yeah, you were such a beast of a funny person. But again, the easiest hang, so consistent. Yeah, and then there was the time where you lived in my family's apartment building with Sandy and Matt.
Yep.
Was there a fourth for a while?
Ebo? Yeah, Ebo would end up on in the living room a lot. Matt ended up moving out, and we had like a little revolving door of people that came in and took Matt's room, and like one of them was Rosa Salazar, who she went on to be like Alita battle angel and stuff like that. So like this big like movie star, and we're like, oh, okay, that's the girl that used to rent her room.
Is that the girl who came out of her room angry when I was screaming on mushrooms in your living room?
That's exactly who that is.
I am such an evil dictator's son. I literally show up to my family's building on mushrooms, and visiting my friends just wake up the whole building probably.
I'll give you a rent break. That's what he yelled.
Didn't say
you
that.
did
No,
so
I
say
didn't.
that.
I know.
100. I could call Sandy right now, and he would 100%.
You could put me on 10 types of acid, and I'd never offer a rent break to anybody.
I pray that Sandy picks up right now.
I was yelling, give me a landline and an armchair.
Yes,
that's what I remember.
Yep, landline and an armchair. And you said when she came out and yelled at you, you 100% were like, I have
no power to give a rent break. I have no power. That's not the way the business is structured.
I'm calling Sandy.
Okay, call Sandy.
Oh, this is hilarious.
My dad and mother-in-law listen to this show.
Do they?
Yeah, not good. Hey, guys.
Come on.
Sandy's doing dad stuff.
He is. He's taking care of his 2 girls.
Our friend Sandy also became a wonderful dad, and he was always like...
Boo.
He was always like the landlord. He was always the friend who paid rent, but had
he was on the lease.
He was the one on the lease, and he was always trying to get rent from 3 fucking loser comics. All right, too bad we didn't get Sandy.
Damn, he would have confirmed. Just note that.
Maybe
you offered a rent break.
Maybe we'll edit it in. So real quick, Sandy, when I was on mushrooms and I disrupted the actress roommate, Dan, you go. Dan says that I yelled I'd get her a rent break, and I said I don't recall that. I said I recall saying I need a landline and an armchair.
You did repeatedly say I need a landline and an armchair, but I don't know if you offered the rent break, but I do recall you wielding the power of knowing the person that could give her a rent break. She was subletting from me. But yeah, I think you alluded to having some nepotism in the building.
But I would have been scared that I'd get in trouble with my family if I was on mushrooms causing issues for our building.
You know what? I think you probably, in hindsight, would have felt that way, but you were really feeling yourself. You just saw Deer Hunter on mushrooms.
It was a good show.
About feeling like a leprechaun licked your asshole. Something to that effect. That's how good it felt.
I loved seeing Deer Hunter. I was tripping so hard at the Deer Hunter concert that I thought he was dressed as a yak. And I was like, damn, this guy does yak outfits? Like, that's cool. Like, cool showmanship. Like, I like for an indie band to like do costume changes, impressive. And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't think he's dressed as a yak. I think you were just seeing that. How is Dan as a roommate?
I think that was the happiest I've ever seen you.
He was very happy.
I loved Deer Hunter. I still do. How is Dan as a roommate, Sandy?
I loved it. We had so much fun living together. It was probably my, as what's known now as brat summer, but it was that for just 2 years, me and him.
What would you ask Dan on a podcast? You have an opportunity right now. What'd be the best interesting answer you think you can get out of Dan for a cool question?
What is the best thing, the most to elicit the best answer from him?
Or like, what's your best Dan story snippet?
Oh, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is when I showed up at the Comedy Store to pick him up, and he was on stage with a porno actress and Ari Shaffir and Don Barris. And you were there too, I believe.
Yes, sir, I was.
And they had a literal dick measuring contest on stage, judged by her mouth, which is in public or at the Comedy Store. One other thing.
Okay, go.
I got a call. I was like, it's like in the middle of the day. I was on the road, and Benji called me. He's like, and you were like, I need to bail out Dan, just in case. Do you have any cash around? He was running around your apartment building naked on mushrooms.
Did I go into your closet and take cash?
Yeah, I believe so. You did, and then you're like, you know what? I can handle it. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Thank you for hiding cash in your apartment.
Yeah, I thank you for that as well.
You win some, you lose some. There were times when I'd be like, I thought I had like $800 in cash in that pocket, but I guess not. Or I might have sold that to Buffalo Exchange with money in it. Fuck.
Damn it. Buffalo Exchange comes up again. We're linked, Sandy. All right, love you, Sandy.
Yep.
Check you later.
Love you, bud.
Love you guys too. Have fun. Wish I was there.
Bye.
John Little just called. That'd be a good call too. Hold on. Let's do one more. Hey, John Little, I'm here with Dan Madonia on my podcast. What's your favorite Dan Madonia story?
You're putting me on the spot on a podcast live?
I'll cut it. It's not live.
I don't do that. I don't do live.
I don't do that.
What the fuck is this? What kind of bullshit podcast are you running?
I saw you called. I thought you might have something interesting to say.
Well, I don't. I don't want to go public with a Dan Madonia story and get him in trouble.
He's fine. He's loose. He doesn't care. He told me he's raising his sons the same way he was raised.
Well, when Dan Madonia was a young boy, he stated that Ari Shaffir had a smaller cock than him. We were outside on the Comedy Store patio. And it just happened to be porno night. Sam Kinison tribute night where all the porn stars were there. And I said, young fella, that girl over there grinding up on Sam Tripoli will be glad to tell you who has the bigger cock. One thing led to another. Dan Madonia's getting his cock stuck on stage, and he gets a boner. She goes, all right. Then she goes to, no, it was Ari first. Sucked Ari off. Said, all right. Then she goes to Dan Madonia and gives him a kiss on the lips after she sucks Ari's dick. And she starts sucking Madonia's dick. She goes, okay, I think Ari was bigger, but Madonia had more room for growth. He didn't get a full boner. And I think that's because he had tasted Ari's cock and he couldn't get Dan Madonia then proceeded to take her home and fuck her. Allegedly. One night, Don Barris was on stage late night, about 2:30 in the morning, maybe 3. And a porn girl was in the crowd with her on a first date with a boom mic operator. One thing led to another. They're fucking in the original room in front of about 10 comics. Dan Madonia, one of them. After she's done getting fucked, And Pete Carbone's on stage acting like he's the husband, being a cuck. Please, honey, don't do this to me. Please don't fuck her in front of me, in front of my friends. This is embarrassing. Dan Madonia goes over to her as she's putting her clothes back on and starts to unzip his pants. And she is about to start sucking. And her date goes, dude, not cool. And Madonia goes, okay, yeah, you're right, not cool. And he zips his pants back up.
He's a man of principles. We love you, John Little. I'll check you later.
Go ahead and air it. Go ahead. See if I give a shit.
Love you, dude. Later. Okay, I take it back. Pete Carbone and John Little should be famous.
They should be.
Well, I feel like we covered the shroom story. We covered the dick sucking on stage story. And we've spent a lot of time in cars. We once drove from Austin to LA in one shot. Remember that?
I do remember that 420 show.
And we met a Deathsquad fan who gave us free weed.
We did. That moment is what, like, when Tony and them were like, oh, we're moving to Austin. I was like, oh, that's gonna work, because that's where we met. That, like, we needed weed really bad. It was 420. We're in Austin. This is before Austin was a thing. Like, there was no scene. Joe Rogan was not going to Texas. Like, we were in Austin and we're performing at this little black box theater.
There were like 2 people there.
Yep. I think they were
Dan's
my
the
wife's
king
friends.
of booking you on shows where 3 people are there.
I'm the king of booking myself on those shows. It's like, it's gotten better. I've got like 14 to 16 people now. But yeah, we're there and we're like, we need weed. And the guy who's opening for us is like, I know a guy, we can go to his house. And me and you walk into the house, and this guy comes from around the corner and he just sees the 2 of us and he just goes, Death Squad for life. And I was like, all right, wow, okay, Death Squad, like, it's hitting people.
Death Squad was Brian Redband, who's like the producer for Joe Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe's Kill Tony show. That was his like podcast network show that we would do sometimes. And so, yeah, we had one fan from podcasting in the Ice House. All right, but buddy, well, I love you. It's so great to see you.
It's so good to see you.
I wish
too,
I could
man.
see you more, but I'm happy I got to see you.
We can get my kids and your embryos together sometime.
Yeah, we'll keep making babies. Maybe we'll have one the same age once one pumps out. Yeah.